Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to SA Accounting Academy. Here's a short clip on one of our previous webinars. I hope that you really do enjoy it.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to our first inaugural session of the Public Sector Series. We're really excited about this and we're so happy to have you with us. It's going to be an excellent series of really a back to basics, fundamentals, getting to understand working in the public sector, understanding the public sector and all the nuances and complexities of the public sector. My background is more from a private sector where Bronwyn, and welcome to Bronwyn for coming to join in these training sessions. Bronwyn's really bringing the public sector content, but we're merging the two together, and we're wanting to have it that those of you that are familiar with the private sector get an introduction to the public sector. Those of you that are newly qualified get an introduction to the public sector. Those of you that work in the public sector just revisit the basics again. It's never ever a bad thing just to go back to the basics again, and sometimes revisiting the basics reminds you about the purpose and the reason you're doing this. So this course that we've put together is over a series of sessions. We've broken it down into pieces. So, the next session will be on ethics, and then we look at risk, and then we look at the PFMA, and we look at the Treasury regulations, and we look at the MFMA, and we really do break it down into bite-sized pieces for you to enjoy the course. But when you get into the course, I'm sure you're going to come back to this section again and again. And I found myself, while we've been recording the later sessions, thinking about this session because it always comes back to the context and the objective of what you're doing and why you're doing it. So welcome to session one. I'm going to be the voice in the background, and Bronwyn is going to take us through, and I'm going to chirp from the peanut gallery. I won't throw anything, I'll just chirp from the peanut gallery.
Won't have any flying things coming through. And also, thanks, Caryn, very much for that. It's a very exciting series. I first qualified in the private sector and then moved into the public sector in about 2006. And so I've been sitting on both sides of the fence. And on top of that, I've audited in the public sector as well as participated in governance structures and training in the public sector, both at councillor level and municipal staff and also accounting graduates. So I love the fact that when you do step back and you see the big picture, you see everyone's got a role, and actually we're all working towards the same stuff. So I'm incredibly excited about what we can bring to the party with this session. It's really about getting onto the same page, understanding the environment that we're working in and the context, and having that understanding. How can we, the people who are doing this webinar, in our various different roles, in various different areas in the public sector, and even as a citizen, how can we contribute to strengthening the governance of our country, the government and the governance, and in session two, you'll see what we mean by that, of our country. How do we contribute?
And I think that's one of the things that's drawn me very much of my interest, is that I'm very tired of everybody sitting back and complaining and being upset and sort of saying, oh, well, this, that, the next thing. And we in the financial space and financially trained, we've got a responsibility. We've got something to offer and something to add in whatever space it may be. And if we're going to put our hands up and say, well, what can we do to make things better? We need to understand the system in which we are playing in. And so this is the point of the series, is anybody interested in the public sector, just actually from an understanding point of view, wanting to know how the public sector works and what the checks and balances are. I think you're going to be really surprised as to how sophisticated and how good the checks and balances really are. And then what role can you play? Maybe you've already got a role, maybe there's a role that you're thinking about, or maybe you want to put your hand up and say, I want to do this. Now that I understand better, I want to find a place where I can help. And, instead of complaining and sort of finding problems all the time, maybe we can start offering solutions instead.
Absolutely.
But until we can start offering solutions, we need to understand the structure in which we will be stepping into. So that is partly what this is about, and partly what today's session is about as well.
So today's session, is to start off with that, I'm just going to go through them all quickly, so we've got session objectives, and then I'll tell you how we're going to work through the slides for today. But this one is session number one. It's where we start off with, like, what is the public sector? What are we even talking about? What do we mean by the public sector? What is the context in which the public sector works in South Africa? And it's very similar actually across the world, in democracies anyway. But what is the context in which they operate? Why is government there? What is the public sector, and why is it there? And what do we mean by public sector? From there, the sessions 2, 3, 4, etc., go and unpack some of these items in more detail. And so this is very much an overall sort of bird's eye view, a map, if you want to. You are here, kind of, and this is the map of the public sector. That's what today's session is about. So you should be able to afterwards have a high-level understanding. In other words, if somebody picked you up and put you somewhere in the public sector, you'd be able to look around you and think, I know where I am. It's not as now I'm an expert, but it's an onward. Now I know what I am, and I know the space that I'm playing in. I know who's in the same pit with me, and I can kind of figure out where to go. I'm not directionless.
And it gives you a sense of what's coming as well, and where we're going to build you up to, so that you can understand what the big picture is. I mean, I think we both believe is if you understand the big picture, then we're going to fill in and colour in the detail throughout the course, but we're going to give you the outline, we're going to give you the big picture, so that you can get a sense of where we're going.
So what do we mean by the public sector? We mean, well, what is the public sector firstly? What are we even here for? Why do we have this? Because it seems to work so badly. What are we doing? What are we trying to do? Then we're going to understand, that's the structures really. We understand the role players and the accountability structures. Now remember, this is a high level, so it's not going to go down into, by the end of today, absolute detail. If I'm unhappy about something wrong, what is the designation of the person I will speak to? But it's the broad strokes, who are the role players, and how does accountability work in the public sector? And you might think accountability, public sector, how do those things go together? And this is going to give you a sort of overall bird's eye view of that. And then to be able to identify the legislation and the regulations that govern the various operations in the public sector. It is the general stuff, i.e. it's cross-cutting across the board, and it'll be enough to say to you, oh, I recognize that there is legislation that is pertinent to a specific sector or area in the public sector. It'll be this and something that's specific. We're not going to go through all the legislation here. Even in this series, we're going to kind of stick to the public financial management, municipal financial management type legislation. But from this today, you'll be able to see where legislation fits in with service delivery. Okay. Then we're going to talk about service delivery. What do we mean? It's a word that's bandied about a lot in politics and in the news rhetoric in our country. What do we actually mean? What are the objectives of service delivery? And that's a really key point to bring this back to. No matter who you are, as a citizen of South Africa, you have certain rights, and the government exists to deliver certain services. And do you even understand what those rights are? Because if everybody in our country really understood that, and understood that it was a right, we might have a little bit more noise from the citizenry holding governments accountable to deliver on those things. And we're going to end off with the PFM cycle. So that's the public financial management cycle. How does it work? What are the stages, and how do we recognize them? And what are the purposes, and how do they all relate together? And where do the role players fit in that? Okay. So that's basically saying, what is government? Who's who? What are they responsible for? Who says, or what says how they're supposed to be doing this? How does that relate to this term of service delivery? And what is the cycle, or what is the process that actually gives birth to this concept of service delivery, the PFM, right? So that's basically what we're going to have from today. And then in the subsequent sessions, we go into more detail in some of these areas. So the program today, if we were recording this live, we would actually have 2 sessions. We would have the first session, we'd have a small break. You can obviously, if you're watching the recording, break when you need to. So we don't have to dictate that to you, but we sort of divided into 2 sessions that make sense. The one is more context related. And then the other one is getting into more detail with the PFM itself. So we're going to start off with the objective of government. So I'm going to have 3 things on the screen here when we're talking about what is government actually supposed to be doing. Why do we have it at all? In session 2, we go into a little bit more detail about what is government actually supposed to be doing, and what is the difference between that and governance. But today, to start off with, we're just going to talk about government in general, right? So what is it that actually forms the basis of anything that we do in this country?
The Constitution.
It is our Constitution.
And everybody bands that around. It's the Constitution. We've got constitutional rights. It's the Constitution.
Yes, it is the Constitution. It's like the birth certificate of South Africa, right?
It's the founding document. I mean, it's absolutely the most important document of the country, and we've got one of the best in the world.
We do.
Not the best in the world.
Yes, exactly. And it's been lauded internationally for exactly that, for incorporating the fairest and most transparent government processes or constitutional processes there are in the world. So the Constitution is the founding legislation, or the birthright, if you want to call it.
I hope that you enjoyed that video. For more of our webinar videos, go to www.accountingacademy.co.za. Thank you and have a lovely day.